On the day I was leaving for my dream cruise, I overheard my daughter-in-law laughing in my kitchen. The taxi was late, so I had walked back down the hall to check the back door one last time. She thought I was already waiting outside. "Perfect," she whispered. "As soon as the old hag's flight takes off, call the movers." We changed the locks by noon. I froze. My suitcase handle dug into my palm, but I didn't make a sound. I didn't say a word. I just stood there like a statue and listened. "Once our furniture is inside, it's a civil matter, Jay," she said. "She can't evict us without a court order. And when she gets back, the guest room will be waiting for her. Or better yet, we put her in a nursing home. She's getting too old to manage this place anyway." I felt the air escape my lungs. My own son was in there with her, listening to her plan to steal my home and lock me away. "Don't worry," she added. "By the time she realizes what happened, it will be too late. This house is finally ours." Those words hurt more than a slap in the face. As if I were already dead. As if this house, which I paid for with 30 years of sweat and sacrifice, was just a prize for them to snatch the moment my back was turned. I clenched my fists. I breathed slowly, and I made the most important decision of my life. My name is Georgina Scherer, and if you had asked me yesterday, I would have told you that my life was perfect, or at least as close to perfect as a 67-year-old widow can get. I live in Naples, Florida. It is a quiet town, the kind of place where the palm trees sway a little slower and the neighbors actually know your name. I have my routine. I have my garden. And most importantly, I have my home. I worked hard for this house. My husband, Robert, and I bought it 30 years ago. We scraped, we saved, and we paid off the mortgage 5 years before he passed away. Every tile in the kitchen, every shrub in the front yard, it represents a lifetime of discipline. It represents my security. I thought I was safe here. I thought this house was my sanctuary. I didn't realize that to some people, even my own family, it wasn't a home. It was just an asset waiting to be seized. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was in my bedroom, trying to zip up a suitcase that was arguably a little too full. I was going on a vacation, a real vacation. I had booked a month-long cruise around the Caribbean. It was a big step for me. Since Robert died, I hadn't really gone anywhere. I spent my days tending to the house and worrying about my son, Jay. But I decided it was time to live a little. I needed the sea air. I needed to stop worrying about everyone else and just breathe. As I was folding my last sundress, I heard a car door slam outside. I looked out the window and saw them walking up the driveway. Jay, my son, and his wife, Samantha. My stomach gave a little lurch. I love my son. I really do. But lately, seeing him just brings a wave of exhaustion. Jay is 35, but he still looks at me with the eyes of a teenager who needs $20 for gas. And Samantha, well, Samantha is a different story. She walked up the driveway with that look she always has, like she's smelling something unpleasant. They were renting a small apartment across town. They were always struggling to make ends meet, or at least that's what they told me. I helped where I could. I paid for their car insurance last year. I bought their groceries more times than I can count. I tried to be the supportive mother and the generous mother-in-law. But the more I gave, the less they seemed to appreciate it. I went downstairs to let them in. "Hey, Mom," Jay said, giving me a quick, distracted hug. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days. "Hi, Georgina," Samantha said. She didn't hug me. She breezed past me into the foyer, her eyes immediately scanning the room. That's the thing about Samantha. She never looks at you. She looks at your things. "I didn't expect you to so early," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "I'm just finishing up packing." "We wanted to see you off," Jay said, wandering into the living room. Make sure you have everything. That's sweet of you. I lied. I knew that wasn't why they were here. They were sniffing around. Samantha ran a finger along the console table in the hallway. She looked at her finger, checking for dust. I don't know how you manage this place all by yourself, Georgina, she said. Her voice was sugary, but there was venom underneath it. 4 bedrooms. 3 baths. It's just so much space for one person. I stiffened. I manage just fine, Samantha. I have a cleaner come in twice a month for the heavy lifting. Still, she pressed, walking into the living room and looking up at the high ceilings. It seems wasteful, doesn't it? Jay and I are crammed into that 2-bedroom apartment, tripping over each other. And you have entire rooms here that just sit empty, collecting dust. They aren't empty, I said defensively. That's Robert's office. And the guest rooms are for when family visits. Right, Samantha smirked. But family never visits, do they? Just us. She was baiting me. I knew she was baiting me. This was an old argument. She had hinted before that I should sell the house and give them the money, or build an in-law suite, or downsize to a condo. I always shut it down. This was my home. I wasn't going anywhere. I like my space, I said firmly. Now, can I get you both some iced tea? I went into the kitchen to busy my hands. My heart was beating a little faster. I hated confrontation. I just wanted to get on my cruise ship and forget about the tension for a few weeks. But the guilt was already creeping in. Was I being selfish? Was it wrong for a widow to live in a large family home while her son struggled to pay rent? Jay followed me into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, looking at his shoes. Mom, he started. About the trip. It's all paid for, Jay. I said quickly. Don't worry about me. No, I know, he said. It's just, things are a little tight this month. With you gone for 4 weeks, if something happens, I don't know if we can handle an emergency. I sighed. I knew this was coming. It was the goodbye tax. I reached for my purse on the counter. I had already prepared for this. I pulled out my checkbook. I saw Samantha lingering in the doorway, watching. Her eyes were locked on the pen in my hand. I wrote this out this morning, I said, tearing the check out. It's for emergencies, Jay. Real emergencies. If the car breaks down or you need a doctor, it is not for new clothes or dinners out. Do you understand? I handed the check to Jay. It was for $2,000. That was a lot of money to me. It was my spending money for the trip, but I sacrificed it for them. Jay took it, looking relieved. Thanks, Mom. You know we appreciate it. But before he could put it in his pocket, Samantha stepped forward. She didn't say a word. She just reached out and plucked the check from his fingers. She looked at the amount, and for a second, her face twisted. She wasn't smiling. She looked disappointed. 2,000, she muttered, barely loud enough for me to hear. Well, it helps, I guess. She folded it and shoved it into her own purse. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even look me in the eye. She just took it as if it were her salary, as if I owed it to her. I hope you have a nice trip, Samantha said, her tone flat. Must be nice to just drop everything and disappear on a luxury boat. It's not luxury, Samantha. It's a senior group discount. I corrected her, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. Right, she said, turning back to the living room. Well, don't worry about the house. We'll check on it. A cold shiver went down my spine. I have the neighbors watching it. I said quickly, Mrs. Higgins has a key. You don't need to drive all the way out here. Samantha stopped. She turned back to me, and a strange smile played on her lips. Mrs. Higgins is old, Georgina. She can barely see past her own porch. Family should look out for family. We'll keep an eye on things. She exchanged a look with Jay, a look I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't a look of concern. It was a look of conspiracy. We should get going. Jay said, suddenly looking nervous. You have to finish packing, Mom. Don't want to miss your flight. No, I said quietly. I don't. I walked them to the door. As they walked down the driveway, Samantha didn't look back. Jay gave a half-hearted wave. I closed the door and locked it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. Why did I feel so sick? I had just given them money. I was going on a dream vacation. I should be happy. But instead, I felt a heavy weight in the pit of my stomach. It was a gnawing feeling that something was off. I looked around my hallway, my photos on the wall, the rug Robert and I bought in Turkey. It all felt suddenly fragile. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that Samantha was just jealous and Jay was just stressed. They wouldn't do anything to hurt me. They were annoying, yes. Ungrateful, absolutely. But they were family. I went back upstairs to zip my suitcase. I needed to leave. The taxi was coming in an hour. I needed to get out of this house and clear my head. If I had known what they were saying to each other in the car right now, I never would have packed that bag. I would have changed the locks right then and there. But I didn't know. Not yet. I just felt the guilt of a mother who thinks she hasn't given enough, unaware that she was about to lose everything she had left. I stood in the hallway with my 2 suitcases sitting like loyal dogs at my feet. The house was quiet, that heavy, settled silence that happens right before you leave for a long time. I checked my watch. The taxi was 10 minutes late. Usually, I am a stickler for punctuality, but I took a deep breath and told myself to relax. I was on vacation time now. Or so I thought. I decided to double-check the back door while I waited. I'm a creature of habit, and I wanted to make sure the deadbolt was engaged. I left my bags by the front door and walked softly down the hallway, my sneakers making no sound on the hardwood floors. That's when I heard it, the click of the back door latch. I froze. My heart jumped into my throat. I knew I had locked that door. I always lock that door. For a split second, I thought about burglars. I thought about grabbing the heavy brass candlestick on the foyer table. But then I heard a voice, a familiar, grating voice that made my blood turn to ice. Relax, Jay. She's probably already at the airport. I saw the taxi company number on her notepad. They pick up early. It was Samantha. They hadn't driven away. They had parked down the street and doubled back. They used the spare key Jay had, the one I gave him for emergencies. I should have announced myself. I should have walked into that kitchen and asked them why on earth they were sneaking into my house 10 minutes after saying goodbye. But something stopped me. It was a gut instinct, a primal warning bell ringing in my ears. Be quiet, it said. Listen. I pressed my back against the wall of the dining room, just inches from the open kitchen doorway. I don't know, Sam. Jay's voice drifted out, sounding shaky. What if she forgot something? What if she comes back? She's not coming back, Jay. Samantha snapped. I could hear her opening the refrigerator. The audacity. She was already making herself at home. She's going to be stuck on a boat in the middle of the ocean for 4 weeks. Do you have any idea how much we can get done in 4 weeks? I still feel sick about this, Jay muttered. You'll feel better when we aren't paying rent anymore, Samantha countered. Her voice dropped, becoming lower, more conspiratorial. Look, the plan is simple. As soon as the old hag's flight takes off, call the movers. I have them on standby for 2 o'clock. We change the locks by noon. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. Old hag. Is that what I was to her? Just an obstacle? An old hag taking up space. But the insults were nothing compared to what she said next. Once our furniture is in, Samantha continued, her voice full of smug satisfaction. It's a civil matter. I looked it up. If we have our belongings here and receive mail, the police can't touch us. She can't evict us without a court order. And courts take months, Jay. Sometimes a year. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees went weak. I had heard horror stories about things like this on the news, squatters taking over homes, but I never imagined it could happen to me. I never imagined it would be my own son holding the door open for them. But when she gets back, Jay started. When she gets back, the guest room will be waiting for her, Samantha interrupted. Or if she makes too much of a fuss, we look into assisted living. She's getting older, Jay. Maybe she's becoming confused. Maybe she's not fit to live alone anymore. A nursing home would be safer for her. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. A nursing home. The air left my lungs. This wasn't just about saving money on rent. This was a hostile takeover. They were planning to steal my life. They were planning to paint me as senile and shove me into a facility so they could enjoy the fruits of my 40 years of labor. I closed my eyes, fighting back hot, angry tears. I wanted to storm into that kitchen. I wanted to scream at Jay, to shake him, to ask him how he could let this woman speak about his mother that way. I wanted to throw them out physically. But then a cold clarity washed over me. If I walked in there now, what would happen? They would lie. Samantha would spin some story about wanting to surprise me by cleaning the fridge. She would gaslight me. She would say I was hearing things, proving her point that I was confused. And even if I kicked them out, they still had the key. They would just wait for the next opportunity. As long as they thought I was the clueless, sweet old widow, they would keep trying. No, screaming wouldn't save me. Screaming would just warn them. I needed to be smarter than them. I needed to catch them. Samantha's voice piped up again. Come on, help me measure this wall. I want to see if the sectional fits here, or if we should toss her antique cabinet. Don't toss it, Jay said quickly. We can sell it. Fine. Sell it. Just get it out of my sight. My antique cabinet. The one Robert bought me for our 10th anniversary. They were already selling my memories. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the taxi driver. I'm outside. The text read. I looked at the front door. My suitcases were there. If I left now, they would think their plan was working perfectly. They would think the old hag was safely on her way to the airport, oblivious and helpless. They would get sloppy. They would make mistakes. If I stayed and fought, it was my word against theirs. But if I let them break in, if I let them commit the crime, then I would have proof. I took a deep breath, pushing the heartbreak down into a tight, hard ball in my stomach. I could cry later. Right now, I had to be a soldier. I tiptoed backward, moving away from the kitchen. I made sure my feet didn't drag. I reached the front door and grabbed the handles of my suitcases. I opened the front door slowly. I winced as the hinge gave a tiny squeak, but Samantha was laughing loudly in the kitchen, drowning it out. I slipped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut until it clicked. I stood there for a second, trembling, not from fear, but from rage. Pure, white-hot rage. The taxi driver was waiting at the curb, popping the trunk. He waved at me. I waved back, forcing a smile onto my face that didn't reach my eyes. I walked down the driveway, the wheels of my suitcase rumbling on the concrete. I hoped they heard it. I hoped they were high-fiving in my kitchen, thinking they had won. Airport, ma'am, the driver asked as he loaded my bags. I looked back at my house. The curtains in the living room twitched. I knew Samantha was watching, making sure I was really gone. Get in, I said to the driver, opening the back door. I slid into the cool leather seat. The door slammed shut, sealing me in. Airport, the driver asked again, looking at me in the rearview mirror. I looked at my house one last time. I saw the silhouette of my son in the window. He was watching me leave. He was watching his mother drive away so he could steal her home. My heart was broken, yes, but my mind was sharp. They wanted a war. They were going to get one. They thought I was a helpless old woman. They were about to find out exactly who Georgina Scherer really was. No, I said, my voice steady and cold. Don't go to the airport yet. The driver looked confused. Ma'am, your meter is running. I know, I said. Just drive. Take me around the corner and pull over. I have a phone call to make. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. The tears were gone. The sadness was gone. There was only the plan. They wanted to play games with the law. Fine. I knew the law too, and I knew something they didn't. They weren't the only ones who could keep a secret. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I wasn't calling the airline to cancel. I was calling the one person who could help me stop this before it even started. The taxi turned the corner, and my house disappeared from view. But I wasn't leaving. I was just getting into position. No, I said again, my voice stronger this time. Don't go to the airport yet. The taxi driver, a man named Lewis according to his ID badge, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. His eyebrows knitted together in confusion. Ma'am, the meter is running. You'll miss your flight. I'm not missing anything, Lewis, I replied, smoothing down my skirt. In fact, I think I'm right on time. Take me to the police precinct on 5th Avenue first. Then, I need you to drop me off at a friend's house just down the street from where you pick me up. Lewis shrugged. It's your money, ma'am. He pulled the car away from the curb. As we drove away from my house, I felt a strange sensation. Usually, leaving home makes me feel homesick. But today, I felt like a general leaving the front lines only to circle back and flank the enemy. I reached into my purse and pulled out my smartphone. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed to buy myself time. I needed Jay and Samantha to believe they had won. I needed them to feel safe, secure, and arrogant. That was when they would make their mistake. I opened my text messages. The last text from Jay was from yesterday. Can't wait to see you off. I typed out a new message. I chose every word carefully. Just boarded the plane. It's so crowded. The flight attendant is making us turn off our phones now. I probably won't have signal for at least 5 hours. Love you both. Please water the ferns. I stared at the screen for a moment. It was the perfect bait. Just boarded meant I was trapped in a metal tube in the sky. Turn off phones meant I couldn't be reached. 5 hours gave them a specific window of time to act. I hit send. I held my breath, watching the 3 little dots appear almost instantly. They were glued to their phones. They were waiting for this. A reply popped up from Samantha. Not Jay. Samantha. Have a safe flight, Georgina. Don't worry about a thing. We'll handle everything here. Relax. Relax. The nerve of that woman. She was telling me to relax while she prepared to steal the roof over my head. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. They took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. They thought the clock had started. They thought they had 5 hours of freedom. Change of plans, Lewis, I said to the driver. Skip the precinct. I can call them. Just take me to 412 Oak Street. It's the yellow house with the white shutters. It's directly across the street from my place. I realized I didn't need to go to the station physically to file a report yet. I needed to be on site. I needed to see the crime happen so I could report it in real time. If I went to the police now, they might just tell me it's a family dispute. But if I caught them in the act of breaking and entering, that was different. The taxi looped around the neighborhood. I ducked my head as we passed my driveway again. I saw Jay's car still parked there. The front door was closed. They were inside. My stomach churned at the thought of Samantha touching my things, opening my drawers, perhaps even measuring the windows for new curtains. We pulled up to Mrs. Higgins' house. Martha Higgins has been my neighbor for 20 years. She is 71, sharp as a tack, and knows everything that happens on this street. She is the neighborhood watch commander, whether the neighborhood wants one or not. I paid Louis and tipped him well for his trouble. Please, I whispered, don't honk. I dragged my suitcases up Martha's walkway as quietly as I could. I rang the doorbell. A moment later, the door swung open. Martha stood there in her floral housecoat, holding a mug of coffee. Her jaw dropped when she saw me. Georgina, she gasped, I thought you left. I saw the taxi pick you up 10 minutes ago. Did you forget your passport? Let me in, Martha, I said, my voice low. I didn't forget anything, but I'm about to lose everything if I don't get off this porch. Martha ushered me inside, immediately sensing the urgency in my tone. She pulled my suitcases into the hallway and locked the door behind us. What on earth is going on? She asked, leading me into her living room. Jay and Samantha, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. They aren't just house-sitting, Martha. I overheard them. They're moving in. Today. Right now. They're planning to change the locks and claim squatters' rights while I'm over the Atlantic. Martha's eyes went wide. She put a hand to her chest. You can't be serious. Jay, you're Jay. Samantha is driving it, I said, walking over to her large bay window. But Jay is going along with it. They called me an old hag. Martha, they talked about putting me in a nursing home when I get back. Oh, honey, Martha said, her face flushing with anger. That is evil. I need a favor, I said, turning to her. I need to sit here. In this window. I need to watch. And I need you to be my witness. You sit right down, Martha said firmly, pointing to her armchair that faced the street. I'll put the kettle on. Nobody pulls a stunt like that on Oak Street. Not on my watch. I sat in the armchair. It was positioned perfectly. Through the sheer lace curtains, I had a direct view of my house across the street. It was like watching a movie screen. I took my phone out again. I wanted to make sure I had my facts straight. I quickly searched for Florida eviction laws and guest residency rules. My hands flew across the screen. If a guest has not established residency, considered a transient occupant, can be removed by law enforcement for trespassing. There it was. The key. Established residency usually meant receiving mail, having a lease, or staying for a significant period. They had been there for 20 minutes. They had no lease. They had no mail. If I stopped them now, before they slept there, before they moved furniture in, they were just intruders. Here, Martha said, placing a steaming cup of tea on the side table. She handed me a pair of bird-watching binoculars. I used these for the cardinals, but they work just as well for rats. I took them gratefully. I raised the lenses to my eyes. The front door of my house opened. Samantha stepped out onto the porch. She was on her phone. She looked excited. She was pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly. I couldn't hear her, but I could read her body language. She was in charge. She was barking orders. Then Jay came out. He was carrying a box from their car. They're starting, I whispered. What are they doing? Martha asked, leaning over my shoulder. They are bringing small things in from their trunk, I said. Probably valuables. Or clothes. I watched as Jay hesitated on the porch. He looked up and down the street. He looked guilty. Good. He should feel guilty. Samantha grabbed his arm and pulled him inside. The door slammed shut. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from my bank. Alert. Card declined at Speedy Movers and Storage. Amount, $1,200. I stared at the screen. They were trying to use the emergency check I gave them to pay for the movers. But I had written that check from my travel account, which had a daily limit on transfers. Or maybe Samantha just tried to run it as a debit transaction. Either way, it hadn't gone through yet. They are trying to spend my money to evict me. I told Martha, showing her the alert. Are you going to call the police now? Martha asked. Not yet, I said, my eyes fixed on the house. I need them to commit. I need the big truck to get here. If the police come now, they can just say they are visiting. I need irrefutable proof that they are moving in. I need to catch them red-handed with the furniture. I took a sip of tea. It was hot, but it didn't warm the chill in my chest. I was watching the people I loved betray me in high definition. I sent them a text saying I was on the plane. I explained to Martha. They think I'm over the ocean. They think they have 5 hours. You're smart, Georgina, Martha said, patting my shoulder. I would have just gone over there with a broom. A broom won't fix this, Martha. I need the law, and to get the law on my side, I need to let them dig their own grave. We sat in silence for another 10 minutes. The anticipation was thick in the air. I kept checking the time. If Samantha was efficient, and unfortunately, she was, the movers would be here any minute. And then I saw it. A large, white box truck turned onto Oak Street. It rumbled slowly down the road, looking for the address. There it is, I said, my voice hardening. The truck hissed as the air brakes engaged, stopping right in front of my driveway. 2 men in uniforms hopped out. Game time, I whispered. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the witness. And in a few minutes, I was going to be the executioner of their little plan. I picked up my phone and dialed the non-emergency line for the Naples Police Department. I didn't dial 911 because nobody was dying, except for my relationship with my son. Police dispatch, a voice answered. Yes, I said, keeping my eyes on the truck as Samantha ran out to greet the movers. I need to report a burglary in progress. I am the homeowner. I am watching strangers force entry into my home. Are you in immediate danger, ma'am? No, I said calmly. I'm across the street, but they are destroying my property. Please send a unit. Quietly. I hung up. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait for the snap. There is a specific kind of heartbreak that comes from being right when you desperately want to be wrong. Part of me, the mother part, was still hoping this was a misunderstanding. Maybe the truck was lost. Maybe they were just storing a few boxes in the garage because their lease was up early. I was bargaining with reality, trying to find an excuse for my son. But then the driver hopped out. He held a clipboard. Samantha marched down the driveway, snatched the clipboard from his hand, and signed it with a flourish. She pointed imperiously toward my front door. I looked at the time on my phone. It had been exactly 45 minutes since my taxi supposedly left for the airport. You can't book a moving company in 45 minutes, I said to Martha. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. You have to schedule these things weeks in advance. They've been planning this for a month, Martha whispered, shaking her head. Maybe longer. While you were cooking them Sunday dinner, they were probably measuring your door frames. That realization hit me harder than a slap. All those times they came over for dinner, all those times Samantha asked about the square footage or the layout of the upstairs, she wasn't making conversation. She was scouting. She was planning her invasion. I raised my phone. My hands were steady now. I pressed the record button. Through the screen of my phone, the scene looked even more grotesque. 2 burly men rolled up the back door of the truck. Inside, it was packed to the ceiling. Mattresses, dressers, mismatched chairs. It was an entire apartment's worth of life, ready to be shoved into my sanctuary. They aren't visiting, I said, narrating for the video evidence. They are moving in. That is a full relocation. Then the violation began. One of the movers grabbed a large, ugly beige sofa. It looked stained and cheap, the kind of furniture you buy for a first apartment and discard when you grow up. He and his partner hoisted it up and began waddling toward my front porch. I held my breath. My front door is original to the house. It is solid mahogany with a custom stained glass insert. Robert, my late husband, spent 3 weekends sanding and refinishing that door by hand 10 years ago. He was so proud of it. He used to say it was the handshake of the house. The movers got to the threshold. The sofa was too wide. Pivot! I saw Samantha yell. I could read her lips. She waved her arms, frustrated. Just push it. Don't you dare, I whispered to the glass. Don't you force that thing. But they did. Samantha grabbed the corner of the sofa herself and shoved. The metal leg of the couch caught the edge of the doorframe. Even from across the street, I imagined I could hear the sound. The screech of metal on wood. The gouge. Oh no, Martha gasped. They scratched it. I zoomed in with my camera. Sure enough, as they wedged the monstrosity through the opening, a long, white scar appeared on the dark mahogany. Something inside me snapped. That wasn't just wood. That was Robert's work. That was my property. And she was treating it like a garbage chute. That's it, I said. I lowered the phone, but kept it recording in my left hand. With my right hand, I dialed the police officer I had spoken to on the dispatch line earlier. This is Dispatcher Miller. A voice said. This is Georgina Scherer. I said. My voice was cold. It didn't sound like me. It sounded like a prosecutor. I called 10 minutes ago about the situation on Oak Street. Yes, Mrs. Scherer. I have a unit finishing up a traffic stop 2 blocks away. They are en route. Update the log. I said sharply. The intruders are now damaging the property. They have forced a large piece of furniture through the front door and gouged the entryway. They are moving rapidly. I believe they are trying to establish tenancy before I can stop them. We have officers on the way, ma'am. Are the intruders known to you? I hesitated for a fraction of a second. This was the moment. If I said, it's my son, they would slow down. They would tell me to file a civil suit. They would tell me to sort it out over Thanksgiving dinner. But Jay wasn't acting like a son right now. And Samantha certainly wasn't acting like family. They were destroying my home. They are unauthorized intruders. I said clearly. I did not give them permission to reside there. I did not give them permission to move furniture in. They obtained a key under false pretenses for emergency use only. They are currently vandalizing my entry. Understood, the dispatcher said. Her tone shifted. It became more serious. Property damage in progress. I'm upgrading the call. Officers will be there in 3 minutes. I hung up. I watched as the movers disappeared inside with the sofa. A moment later, they came back out for a mattress. A bare mattress. No cover. Dragging it across my clean porch. I felt a wave of nausea. My house was clean. It smelled like lavender and lemon oil. Now, it was being filled with their dust, their grime, their chaos. Look at her, Martha said, pointing. Samantha was standing on my front lawn, now, hands on her hips. She looked like she was surveying her kingdom. She pointed to my rose bushes, my prize-winning tea roses, and directed the movers to stack boxes right on top of the flower bed to save time. No, I hissed. Not the roses. One of the movers dropped a heavy cardboard box right onto the center of the bush. I watched the branches snap. I saw the pink petals scatter on the grass. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was in a place of pure, calculated fury. They think I'm at 30,000 feet. I murmured. They think I'm sipping ginger ale and watching a movie. They have no idea. Jay looks sick, Martha observed. I shifted the camera to find my son. He was standing by the truck, holding a lamp. He wasn't moving. He was staring at the house. He looked pale. He looked like a man who knew he was doing something wrong, but was too cowardly to stop it. He should be sick, I said. He knows better. He grew up in that house. He knows how much his father loved that door. He knows how much I love those roses. He's afraid of her, Martha said. She bullies him, Georgina. That's no excuse, I replied. He's a grown man. If he can't protect his mother's home from his wife's greed, he doesn't deserve the home. The movers were working fast. They were professional, efficient. In 10 minutes, they had moved half the truck onto my lawn and porch. It looked like a yard sale gone wrong. My beautiful, manicured sanctuary looked like a dump. Georgina, Martha said, grabbing my arm, "Look." She pointed down the street. Silently, without sirens, a black and white police cruiser turned onto Oak Street. It glided toward us like a shark in the water. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. This was real. I was calling the police on my own child. There was no going back after this. The neighbors would talk. The bridge would be burned. But then I looked at the scratch on the door. I looked at the crushed roses. I looked at Samantha, laughing as she carried a box of her shoes into my master bedroom. I didn't regret it. "Stay here, Martha," I said, standing up. "Keep recording." "Where are you going?" "I'm going to meet the officers," I said, smoothing my blouse. "I'm going to introduce myself to the intruders." I walked to the front door of Martha's house. My legs felt heavy, but my head was high. I had spent my whole life being nice, being accommodating, being the quiet, supportive mother. That woman got in the taxi 45 minutes ago. The woman who walked out of Martha's house was someone else entirely. She was the owner of 412 Oak Street, and she was taking her house back. I opened the door and stepped out into the humid Florida air. The police car pulled up to the curb in front of my driveway, blocking the moving truck. The movers froze. Samantha stopped halfway to the door, a box in her arms. She looked at the police car, confused. She probably thought it was a neighbor complaining about the parking. Then she looked across the street. She saw me. I stood on the edge of the curb, locking eyes with her. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there, a witness to her crime. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. The box in her hands slipped. It was time. The box in Samantha's hands hit the grass with a heavy thud. It split open, spilling pairs of her high heels onto my front lawn. But she didn't look down. She couldn't take her eyes off me. I stood on the curb, the afternoon sun beating down on my shoulders. Flanking me were 2 officers from the Naples Police Department. They were tall, uniformed, and wearing sunglasses that made them look impossible to argue with. To Samantha, I must have looked like a ghost. Just 45 minutes ago, she thought I was strapped into a seat on a Boeing 737, hurtling toward the Caribbean. She thought she had won. Seeing me standing there, calm and grounded on my own street, broke her brain for a moment. "Stay right here, Mrs. Scherer," the older officer said. His name tag read Miller. "Let us secure the scene." "No," I said softly but firmly. "I'm coming with you. It's my house. I have the key." Officer Miller looked at me, then gave a curt nod. He understood. This wasn't just a police call. It was a reclamation. We walked up the driveway together. The movers, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, had already backed away. They were leaning against the truck, arms crossed, shaking their heads. They knew trouble when they saw it. One of them, a young man with a beard, looked at me and mouthed, "Sorry, ma'am." I ignored him. My eyes were fixed on the front door. Jay had come out onto the porch now. When he saw the police, he didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. It was the look of a man who had been dragged into a crime he didn't have the stomach for, and he was finally glad to be caught just so it would end. Samantha, however, found her voice. "What is this?" she screeched, her voice cracking. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You're supposed to be in the air. You texted us. You said you were taking off." I didn't answer her. I didn't owe her an explanation. I walked right past her up the steps. She tried to block the door, standing in the threshold like a sentry. "Move," Officer Miller said. He didn't shout, but his voice carried the weight of the law. "Step aside, ma'am." Samantha scrambled back, tripping over the threshold. I reached into my purse and pulled out my key ring. The familiar weight of it felt good in my hand. I inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. I pushed the door open, wincing as it scraped against the box they had shoved into the hallway. I stepped inside, and my heart sank. The foyer was a disaster. There were boxes stacked 3 high against the walls. My antique hallway runner rug had been kicked into a heap in the corner. Muddy footprints were stamped all over the hardwood I kept polished. It smelled like sweat and cardboard. It didn't smell like my home anymore. Samantha and Jay followed us in, with the second officer bringing up the rear. "This is harassment." Samantha yelled, trying to regain control of the narrative. She turned to Officer Miller, putting on her best victim face. "Officer, this is my mother-in-law. She's having some sort of episode. She gave us permission to be here. We live here." I turned slowly to face her. I was standing in the center of my living room, my sanctuary. "I never gave you permission to live here," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who was done being a doormat. "Liar!" Samantha spat. "You told us to watch the house. We're family. You can't just call the cops on family." She looked at Jay. "Tell them, Jay, tell them she said we could stay." Jay looked at me, then at the floor. He couldn't do it. He couldn't look me in the eye and lie. She said we could check on the plants." Jay whispered. "See," Samantha yelled triumphantly. "We're checking on them. We just decided to bring some stuff over to make it easier. You can't kick us out. We have possession. Our stuff is inside. It's a civil matter now. I know the law." She looked so smug. She really thought she had found a loophole. She thought because she had dragged a dirty sofa through my door, she owned the place. Officer Miller looked at me. "Mrs. Scherer, did you agree to a lease? Did you agree to let them move in?" "No," I said, "and I can prove what their actual intent was." I pulled out my phone. The screen was still glowing. I tapped the video file I had recorded less than an hour ago. I was standing outside the kitchen window when the taxi was late. I said to the room. I heard everything. I pressed play. I turned the volume all the way up. The sound of Samantha's voice filled the silent living room. It was tinny coming through the phone speakers, but every word was crystal clear. "As soon as the old hag's flight takes off, call the movers. We change the locks by noon." Samantha's face went white. She stopped breathing. The recording continued. "Once our furniture is in, it's a civil matter. She can't evict us without a court order. She'll be forced to live in the guest room or go to a nursing home." I let the recording play until the end, where her cruel laughter echoed through the room. Then I hit stop. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Jay. He was crying. Silent tears were running down his face. He knew I had heard him agree to it. He knew I had heard him sell me out. I looked at Officer Miller. His jaw was set hard. He looked from Samantha to the scratched door, then back to me. "That sounds like intent to defraud and criminal trespass to me," Miller said. He turned to Samantha. "Ma'am, you have not established residency. You have no lease. You receive no mail here. You have been on the premises for less than 2 hours. You are not a tenant. You are an intruder." But my sofa is inside. Samantha stammered, her confidence shattering like glass. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Not in Florida, the officer corrected her coldly. And certainly not when you break in the moment the homeowner leaves. You are trespassing. You have two choices. You can remove your belongings and vacate the property immediately, or you can be arrested for breaking and entering and criminal mischief for the damage to the door. Samantha gasped. She looked at Jay, waiting for him to save her, waiting for him to beg his mommy for mercy. Jay, she hissed, do something. Jay took a step toward me. He looked like a little boy again. Mom, please. We didn't mean it like that. It was just, we were desperate. I looked at my son, the boy I raised, the boy I sat up with when he had fevers, the boy I paid college tuition for. And I realized in that moment that the boy was gone. The man standing in front of me was a stranger who had conspired to put me in a nursing home just to steal my assets. I raised my hand, palm out. Stop. Don't. I said, Mom, I'm sorry. He sobbed, reaching for my hand. I pulled my hand away. The physical rejection made him flinch. You stood by, I said. My voice didn't waver. You stood in that kitchen and listened to her call me a hag. You listened to her plan to lock me out of my own life. And you didn't say no. You helped her measure the walls. I was going to tell you. He lied. No, you weren't. I said, you were going to let me come home from my vacation and find my key didn't work. You were going to let me sleep on the street or force me into a home. I took a deep breath. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it was a clean pain, like setting a broken bone. You are done, Jay. I said, you aren't my tenant. You aren't my house sitter. And right now, you barely feel like my son. Get your things. Get your wife. And get out of my house. Jay looked at me, stunned. He had never heard me speak like this. He expected me to cave. He expected me to write a check to make the problem go away. But the bank of Mom was closed. Permanently. Officer Miller stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. You heard the lady. Start moving. If this house isn't empty in 30 minutes, you're leaving in handcuffs. Samantha let out a scream of frustration. She kicked a box, hurting her toe, which only made her scream louder. I hate this place anyway, she yelled, showing her true colors finally. It smells like old people. I didn't want to live here. Then you should be happy to leave, I said calmly. I walked over to my armchair, the only piece of furniture they hadn't covered with their junk yet, and sat down. I crossed my legs. I'll be watching, I said. Don't scratch the floors on your way out. There's a saying that revenge is a dish best served cold. But standing there in my living room, watching the chaotic reversal of my son's attempted takeover, I realized that justice isn't cold. It is loud, it is sweaty, and frankly, it is exhausting. The atmosphere in the house had shifted from tense to frantic. The police officers, Officer Miller and his partner, had stepped out onto the porch to give us space, but they stayed close enough to ensure the eviction happened. Their presence was a heavy, silent weight on Jay and Samantha's shoulders. The movers were furious, and I didn't blame them. They were hired to do a job, not to be pawns in a family war. They had spent the last hour hauling heavy boxes into the foyer and living room, and now they were being told to put it all back on the truck. They weren't being gentle anymore. I watched as one of them grabbed a stack of Samantha's fashion magazines and tossed them into a bin with a loud thud. They weren't wrapping the lamps in bubble wrap anymore. They were just shoving things wherever they would fit. Careful! Samantha shrieked as a mover hoisted her vanity table. That's vintage. Lady, you're lucky we're moving it at all. The mover grunted, not even looking at her. We have another job in an hour. This is eating into our schedule. I sat in my armchair, the queen of a castle that was currently being sieged and unsieged at the same time. I didn't offer to help. I didn't offer them water. I just watched. Then came the moment that turned the tragedy into a farce. The foreman, a burly man with a clipboard and a very short temper, marched up to Jay. "All right," the foreman said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We're loading it back up. But I need to settle the bill now. The deposit covered the trip here, but since the job is canceled and we have to haul it back to storage, there's a restocking fee and an hourly surcharge." Jay looked pale. He wiped his hands on his jeans. Right. How much?" $1,200 for the day, plus the surcharge," the foreman said. "And I need it now. We don't invoice for aborted jobs." Jay swallowed hard. He looked at Samantha. She was busy pretending to inspect a fingernail, refusing to make eye contact with him. She was the one who ordered the truck, but she was making him pay for it. Typical. Jay pulled out his wallet. His hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped his credit card. He handed it to the foreman, who swiped it on a small mobile terminal attached to his phone. We all waited. The little machine whirred. Beep, beep. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. "Declined," the foreman said flatly. Jay's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen since he was a teenager caught skipping school. That can't be right. Try it again. It's a travel card." "It's declined, buddy," the foreman said, his voice getting louder. "Do you have another card?" "Cash." Jay fumbled through his wallet. He pulled out a debit card. He handed it over. Beep, beep. "Insufficient funds," the foreman read out loud. The humiliation was palpable. My son, a 35-year-old man, couldn't pay to move his own wife's furniture out of the house he tried to steal. It was pathetic, and it highlighted exactly why they were doing this. They weren't just greedy, they were broke. They were drowning in their own bad decisions and wanted my life raft to save them. The foreman was losing patience. "Look, I'm not unloading this truck at the storage unit until I get paid. If you can't pay, I'm dumping this stuff on the curb right here. I'm not working for free." "No," Samantha gasped, finally looking up. "You can't leave my things on the lawn. It's going to rain." "Then pay the man," I said. My voice cut through the noise like a knife. Samantha whipped her head around to look at me. Her eyes narrowed. For a second, I saw the wheels turning in her head. She realized Jay was useless. She realized she was cornered. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She tried to manipulate me. "Georgina," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Look, this is ridiculous. Jay's check hasn't cleared yet. You know how banks are. Can you just handle this? We'll pay you back next week. I promise." I stared at her. I actually blinked, wondering if I had heard her correctly. After calling me an old hag, after planning to put me in a nursing home, after scratching my door, she was asking me to pay for the movers she hired to invade my house. "You want me to pay?" I asked slowly. "It's just a loan," Jay muttered, looking at his shoes. "Come on, Mom. Don't let them dump our stuff on the street. It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing," I repeated. I stood up from my chair. I smoothed down my skirt. I looked at the foreman, then at my son, then at his wife. "What is embarrassing, Jay, is that you are a grown man stealing from your mother because you can't manage your own life. What is embarrassing is that you let this woman convince you that I was a burden to be disposed of." I turned to Samantha. "And you think I'm going to open my purse? You think I'm going to write a check to clean up your mess? We're family." Samantha shrilled. "You have plenty of money. You were going on a cruise. Don't be so spiteful." I laughed. It was a soft, dry laugh, but it silenced the room. "I am not paying for my own invasion," I said. "Clearly, I am not paying one single dime to remove the things you brought here, to replace me. If you can't pay the movers, that is a civil matter. Isn't that what you said? Figure it out. I turned my back on them and walked toward the front door. Mom, Jay cried out. I kept walking. I stepped out onto the porch and took a deep breath of fresh air. The scene outside was even better. The commotion, the police car, and the big moving truck had attracted an audience. This is the suburbs. Privacy is just an illusion. Mrs. Higgins was still at her window across the street, watching with her binoculars. But she wasn't alone. The Johnsons from next door were out watering their lawn, staring openly. Mr. Henderson, who lives 2 houses down, was walking his dog and had stopped right at the end of my driveway. They all saw it. They saw the police. They saw the movers carrying the beige sofa back out of the house. They saw the chaos. Samantha stepped out onto the porch, realizing Jay was still arguing with the foreman inside. She saw the neighbors. She saw Mr. Henderson staring. Samantha cares about appearances more than anything. She drives a leased luxury car. She can't afford just to look rich. She froze. Her face turned crimson. She realized everyone knew. They knew she was being kicked out. They knew she had failed. "What are you looking at?" she screamed at Mr. Henderson. "Mind your own business." "It is my business when there's a police cruiser on the block, ma'am," Mr. Henderson called back calmly. Inside, Jay must have finally found a credit card that worked, probably an emergency card with a horrific interest rate, because the foreman came out looking satisfied. "All right, boys, load it up," he yelled. The exit was slow and painful. I stood by the scratched front door, holding it open like a doorman at a hotel where the guests have overstayed their welcome. I watched as every box, every bag, every piece of their life was paraded back down the driveway. Jay walked past me carrying a lamp. He wouldn't look at me. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered as he passed. "I know you are," I said quietly. "But sorry doesn't fix the door, Jay, and it doesn't fix us." Finally, the house was empty of their things. The foyer was dirty, scuffed, and smelling of stress, but it was mine again. The movers slammed the back of the truck shut. The engine roared to life, spewing a cloud of exhaust. Samantha marched to their car. She didn't look at me. She got into the passenger seat and slammed the door so hard I thought the window would shatter. Jay trudged behind her, looking like a defeated soldier. He got into the driver's seat. As they backed out of the driveway, Jay looked up one last time. Our eyes met through the windshield. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there, tall and unmoving. I was the old hag they wanted to get rid of. But as I watched their taillights disappear down the street, followed by the rumbling moving truck, I didn't feel old. I felt powerful. I turned to Officer Miller, who was writing something in his notebook. "Is everything secure, Mrs. Scherer?" he asked, tipping his cap. "Yes, officer," I said. "The trash has been taken out." When the taillights of the moving truck finally disappeared, the silence that fell over my house was heavy. It wasn't the peaceful silence I was used to. It was the stunned silence of a battlefield after the cannons stopped firing. My front door was scratched. My rose bushes were crushed. My hallway smelled like strangers. I didn't sit down to cry. I didn't have time for tears. I had to secure the perimeter. I went straight to the kitchen drawer and found the number for a 24-hour locksmith. It was 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. I didn't care about the after-hours surcharge. I wanted those locks changed before the sun went down. The locksmith, a polite young man named David, arrived 40 minutes later. He took one look at the gouge on the door frame and the frantic energy in my eyes, and he didn't ask questions. He just got to work. "I want high security," I told him, standing on the porch with my arms crossed. "I want a deadbolt that requires a key from both sides, and I want to install a video doorbell." "I can do the deadbolt right now, ma'am," David said, drilling into the wood, "and I have a Ring camera unit in the van." I can set it up for you, connect it to your phone. You'll get an alert anytime someone steps onto your property. Do it, I said. Watching him work was therapeutic. Every screw he tightened felt like he was stitching my life back together. When he handed me the new keys, shiny silver and utterly unfamiliar, I felt a wave of relief so strong my knees almost buckled. The old keys won't work anymore. I asked just to be sure. Not a chance, David promised. If anyone tries to use the old key, it won't even turn. They're locked out for good. I paid him and tipped him $50. It was the best money I had ever spent. That night, I didn't sleep well. I lay in bed clutching my phone, staring at the feed from the new camera. The little green light on the app told me my front porch was empty. It was addictive. I was waiting for them to come back. I was waiting for Samantha to try again, but the porch stayed empty. The attack didn't come from the front door. It came from the phone. At 9:30 the next morning, my cell phone rang. It was Jay. I let it ring 3 times. I stared at his name on the screen. My thumb hovered over the red decline button. Part of me wanted to block him. Part of me wanted to erase him until he remembered how to be a decent human being. But the mother in me answered. "Hello," I said. My voice was crisp. "Mom." Jay's voice was wrecked. He sounded like he had been crying all night. "Mom, please don't hang up." "I'm listening," I said. "It's a nightmare here," he sobbed. "Samantha's going crazy. We're at a motel because the apartment complex won't let us move back in until the 1st of the month. Our stuff is in storage. We're living out of suitcases." "That sounds uncomfortable," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. I refused to offer sympathy. "Mom, you have to understand," Jay pleaded. "It wasn't my idea. She pressured me. She said it made sense financially. She said you wouldn't mind because you're family." "Don't lie to me, Jay," I cut him off. "I heard the recording. You weren't pressured. You were complicit. You stood there and helped her plan it. You agreed to put me in a home." "I didn't mean it," he yelled, desperate now. I didn't know how to say no to her. She's my wife. "And I am your mother," I said, gripping the phone tight. "I changed your diapers. I paid for your college. I held you when your father died. And you chose a woman who calls me a hag over me." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. Can we come over for dinner? Can we talk about this in person? I need to see you." I looked at the new deadbolt on the door. I looked at the scratch Samantha had left behind. "No," I said. "What?" "No, Jay, you cannot come over. You are not welcome in this house." "But for how long?" he asked, panic rising in his voice. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Until I can look at you without seeing a thief. You chose your wife over your mother, Jay. That was your decision. Now you have to live with her. You have to live with the woman who tried to rob me. Do not come back here until you have grown a spine." "Mom, please." "Goodbye, Jay." I hung up. I didn't slam the phone down. I pressed the end call button gently. It was more final that way. My hands were shaking, but I didn't collapse. I had one more call to make, the most important one. I dialed the number for Martin Reynolds, my estate lawyer. He had handled Robert's will and helped me set up my trust years ago. "Georgina." Martin's voice was warm and familiar. "I thought you were on a cruise. Are you calling from the ship?" "I never made it to the ship, Martin," I said. "I need an appointment. Today. It's an emergency regarding my estate." The tone of my voice must have alerted him because he cleared his schedule for 2 p.m. I dressed carefully for the meeting. I wore my best navy blazer and the pearl earrings Robert gave me. I wanted to look capable. I wanted to look like a woman of sound mind. When I sat in Martin's leather chair and played him the recording of Samantha and Jay. His face went from professional curiosity to horrified shock. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. In 30 years of practice, Martin said quietly, "That is one of the coldest things I have ever heard." "I want to protect myself, Martin," I said, "and I want to protect this house." They said they were waiting for me to die or to put me away so they could take it. I want to make sure that never happens. "We can update the will," Martin said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. "Currently, Jay is the sole beneficiary of the estate, including the property at 412 Oak Street. Change it," I said. Martin's pen hovered over the paper. "To what, Georgina? Do you want to leave it to a grandchild, a cousin?" "I don't have grandchildren. Thank God," I said. "If I did, Samantha would use them as leverage. No, I want the house to go to charity." Martin looked up. The entire property, I affirmed. "If something happens to me, whether it's next week or in 20 years, this house is to be sold. The proceeds will go to the Naples Women's Shelter and the local Humane Society." I took a breath, letting the decision settle in my chest. It felt right. "I want a clause added," I continued. "A specific clause stating that under no circumstances is Jay Scherer or Samantha Scherer allowed to reside in, purchase, or inherit the property. If I become incapacitated, Martin, if they try to say I'm senile, I want you to be my power of attorney, not Jay." Martin wrote furiously. "We can set up a revocable living trust," he explained. "We put the house in the trust. You are the trustee. If you become incapacitated, I step in as the successor, trustee, not your son. It locks them out completely. They won't be able to touch a single brick." "Do it," I said. "Draw it up. And the rest of the assets." Martin asked gently, "Your savings? The life insurance?" I thought about Jay. I thought about his panicked voice on the phone. He was weak, yes. He was foolish. But he was still my son. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't Samantha. "He can have the life insurance," I said softly, "but put it in a trust that pays out monthly. If he gets a lump sum, she'll spend it on designer bags in a week. I want him to have enough to survive, but not enough to fund her lifestyle." Martin nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. "That is very wise, Georgina. It's benevolent considering what they tried to do." "I'm still his mother," I said, standing up to leave. "I will make sure he doesn't starve, but I will not feed the monster he married." I signed the preliminary papers right there on his desk. As I walked out of the law office into the bright Florida sunshine, I felt lighter than air. I checked my phone. There was a notification from my Ring camera. Motion detected at front door. I opened the app. On the screen, I saw a delivery driver dropping off a package. It was a box of gardening tools I had ordered last week. I smiled. My house was safe. My future was safe. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't need a vacation to escape my life. I had just reclaimed it. I got into my car and drove home. My home. And this time, I knew for a fact that my key was the only one that worked. It has been 3 weeks since the moving truck rumbled away from my curb, taking the chaos with it. 3 weeks of quiet. 3 weeks of waking up without that heavy, anxious knot in my stomach. I decided not to go on that cruise, at least not yet. I called the travel agency and postponed it until the spring. After fighting so hard to keep my home, I realized I didn't want to leave it. I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to sit in every room, walk on every floor, and appreciate the space that I had reclaimed. This is my staycation. And honestly, sipping coffee in my own pristine kitchen, knowing that my locks are secure and my deed is safe, is more relaxing than any beach in the Caribbean. The scratch on the front door has been repaired. I hired a specialist to sand and stain it. You can't even tell it was there. It's like the scar healed. I also hired a gardener to replant the rose bushes Samantha's movers crushed. It cost a pretty penny, but seeing those new blooms opening up this morning felt like a victory flag waving in the breeze. Jay has called a few times. The first few calls were desperate, filled with complaints about the motel and Samantha's moods. I kept those conversations short. I didn't offer money. I didn't offer advice. I just listened for a minute, said, "I hope you figure it out," and hung up. The last time he called, he sounded different, quieter. He told me he got a second job delivering pizzas in the evenings to pay off his credit card debt. He told me Samantha was forced to get a part-time job at a retail store. He sounded tired, but for the first time in years, he sounded like a man, not a dependent child. I realized then that by cutting him off, I hadn't hurt him. I had saved him. I had been holding him up for so long that his own legs had forgotten how to stand. By kicking the crutch away, I forced him to walk. It was the hardest thing I've ever done as a mother, but I know now it was the most necessary. As for me, I feel lighter. It's strange to say at 67, but I feel younger than I have in a decade. I didn't realize how much energy I was wasting on worrying about them. I was carrying their financial stress, their marital drama, and their entitlement on my back like a backpack full of rocks. Now that I've put it down, I can breathe. I spend my mornings in the garden. I spend my afternoons reading books I actually want to read, not books about parenting adult children. I joined a walking club with Mrs. Higgins and the other ladies on the block. We walk 3 miles every morning, and let me tell you, the gossip is delicious. But the best part is knowing that I am not the subject of the gossip anymore. I am the hero of the street, the woman who stood her ground. I'm sitting on my back patio right now. The sun is setting, painting the Florida sky in shades of orange and purple. The air is warm, and the only sound is the wind chimes singing in the breeze. There is no Samantha complaining about the heat. There is no Jay asking for a check. There is just me, my home, and the peace I fought for. I take a sip of my iced tea and look at the camera one last time. They tried to make me feel old. They tried to make me feel useless. They thought I was a hag who needed to be put away in a nursing home so they could take what was mine. But they forgot one thing. I am the matriarch of this family. I built this life. And as long as there is breath in my lungs, I will be the one who decides how I live it. I didn't just save my house that day. I saved my own life. And let me tell you, it's a beautiful life. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.